So when we coach people on clarity, there's kind of four quadrants that we coach on. So, and I'm going to just run through them real high level, and then I want to dig into just how you got clarity around the business you bought, et cetera. But we have
Yeah.
clarity of your worldview, which most people don't even think about, which is really important. So there's two things there. One is, are you going to focus your life on serving yourself, or are you going to focus your life on serving others? So those are really the only two worldviews out there. One is like consumerism. I just want to make a ton of money, buy the Bugatti, just do my thing, which I'm totally opposed to. The second is we're building something beautiful. We're employing people. We're raising other people up along the way. We've obviously got a faith component.
Welcome to the Exceptional Companies Podcast, a podcast for purpose-led entrepreneurs looking to master the art of buying, selling, or optimizing small businesses. Your host, Chris Seegers, founder of Exceptional Companies and author of Selling Main Street, has over a decade of experience starting, buying, and leading successful businesses. He's here to guide you through the complex world of business transactions and growth. Each week, we dive deep with actionable insights, expert interviews, and real-world strategies to activate and equip you to live exceptionally and build exceptional businesses. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Here's your host, Chris Seegers.
Welcome to the Exceptional Business Podcast, hosted by yours truly, Chris Seegers, where we explore how to buy, sell, and optimize your small business. I have my amazing friend, Tato Corcoran, on. She is a real estate investor, owns a business, and I always intro with what I love most about this person or a superpower. Here's what I'll say about Tato. She's 100% unstoppable. Like, you will not stop her. You better get off the train tracks. She's going to run you over.
Okay.
And number two, she's brutally authentic. Then, where did we meet? She was the most impressive person in our mindset mastermind, and has done more in 3 years than I think most people do in 20 years. So, Tato, I'm excited to have you on the show. Welcome to the show. And really, we wanted to dive into clarity on buying a small business. So you own a business, we own a bunch of businesses, we bought, sold, help people optimize. I want to hear about your journey on how you got there and how you achieved the clarity and actually got through it, and then dig into questions, funny stories, and anything else you've got. So welcome.
I love it. Okay, if anyone else has listened to me record anything in the past, they know that I'm a crier. So you should have told me what your intro was, because you almost have me crying, which would be super embarrassing. So thank you for all that. Yeah, absolutely. So in a super succinct nutshell, I was actually born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area, so West Coast. When I graduated college, I got an entry-level tech job, which is what pretty much every millennial on the West Coast does.
Yep.
So I was working in downtown San Francisco for a company called Salesforce. Many know it. It's one of the tech giants on the coasts. And honestly, I was just lucky to get a pretty sought-after job at a really sought-after company fresh out of college. And so unlike most of kind of my peer set, if you will, I didn't leave it. I was there almost 10 years. I like to say that I grew up at Salesforce. It was an absolutely amazing experience. I did a ton, but I've always just innately had that love for the hustle. I truly believe, people can disagree with this, but I truly believe that you're either born with that or you're not. You either just crave the hustle and you need it every day.
See, I believe the exact opposite. So we should dig into that, but keep going.
Interesting. Yeah. Or it doesn't do anything for you. And so, you just aren't into it. But anyways, so I'm a hustler, always have been. I didn't know what form that was going to take. And I kind of accepted that for the first half of my 20s, just okay, I'm just going to live my life, have great experiences, figure it out. And then through a series of happenings that we can either get into or not, long story short, I got into buying real estate.
So let's stop there for a second. So we've been coaching a lot on clarity. So I believe most people don't have sufficient or any clarity in their life in any form or fashion. And that's why life is kind of running them.
Yeah.
As opposed to talk us through that, because I had a couple of pivotal events in my life that forced me to say, I need to get clear on exactly what I want out of life and build a blueprint for that. So let's chat a little bit on that.
Yeah. Definitely. When you talk about clarity, I know exactly what you're saying, right? And I've absolutely had those moments. For me, what's always preceded that is just sheer blind ambition and risk. I would be lying if I told you I found myself in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and it just became so clear that I should build a real estate empire. Like that would just not be the truth. The truth is that I find myself in situations and a risk or an opportunity either presents itself or like it's an idea in my
And
head.
you take it every time,
And
as I know you. You're like, you know what? I'm going to do it.
basically, like,
I'm going to do it.
exactly. Like, unless it's like 75% chance going to kill me or someone else, honestly, I do. That is without a doubt my greatest strength and my biggest weakness.
I think we're
Like it's
similar.
always been like the best thing and like my biggest downfall, and for sure like my biggest vulnerability, but it's just who I am. So it's funny, like when you talk about clarity, definitely like I think for me, like I have to like dive off the cliff, be at risk of not being able to build a parachute, somehow pulling it out of my butt and figuring it out. And then I'm like, oh, wait, I'm so clear now. It's like, it would be super great if that could happen in reverse order, like it does for some people.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like my clarity journey in like each of these segments that I've like now been through.
Yeah. And we have a saying in our businesses, brick by brick. So it's like, hey, look, if we don't know what we're doing, just put a brick down today. Like, let's build a foundation,
I can agree
put a
more.
foot in front of you. Like, don't worry about the 10-year. Now we have a 10-year plan and a 3-year plan, but often that changes so dramatically. So I love it. Awesome.
And I don't know if we're like taking a left turn, so not to get like too tactical, but the brick by brick is hands down, in my opinion, what prevents 99.99999% of the world from ever doing anything.
For sure.
It's like entrepreneurs are set apart, not because they're smart, not because they're, whatever, they might be all these great things, but they're willing to just grab a brick and lay it down. And that can be like way too overwhelming of a step, I feel like, for like common humanity. If you will.
One of our core values is grit,
opportunity.
right? Which is every day showing up and doing the hard things because you want to achieve something, some dream.
Yeah.
And we found most people have very little grit. And I can't remember who said it, but somebody said consistent action day over day beats talent anytime, like anytime. I'm not a smart guy.
I would die on a sword. 100%. Yes, I would die on a sword about that.
Yeah, for sure. So when we coach people on clarity, there's kind of 4 quadrants that we coach on. So, and I'm going to just run through them real high level, and then I want to dig into just kind of how you got clarity around the business you bought, et cetera. But we have clarity of your worldview, which most people don't even think about, which is really important. So there's 2 things there. One is, are you going to focus your life on serving yourself, or are you going to focus your life on serving others? So those are really the only 2 worldviews out there. One is like consumerism. I just want to make a ton of money, buy the Bugatti, just do my thing, which I'm totally opposed to. The second is we're building something beautiful. We're employing people. We're raising other people up along the way. We've obviously got a faith component. Also within that worldview, you have the scarcity people and the abundant people. So I know you're an abundant thinker. I'm an abundant thinker. All that means is we're going to build a bigger pie together. Like, we're not worried. I'm not worried about taking something from you, an opportunity, like, or you taking something from me. And, if you don't have it, then I have it, et cetera. It's just like, we're going to build this pie bigger. So we start with clarity of the worldview. And this is why, if you're thinking about buying a business, you're going to get kicked in the teeth. So I want to know like the purpose behind why you're doing this, right? So if you're not clear around, and this, so as you coach folks and I coach folks, I'm always like, hey, why? Why do you want to buy a business? Well, this. Okay, why? Why do you want to? Okay, well, why? And it's either I want to make a pile of money, which is not a great motivator, I don't think, or it's, man, I really would love to help my family and my community and make money, right? Money is a good end product, or a good byproduct. So we start with worldview, clarity. Then, whether it be a seller we're coaching or a buyer or optimizing the business, we talk about clarity of your dream life. Okay, so like, buying your business is part of that, but like, what do you really want in 10 years? If you could map out your ideal life, let's talk about that. Then the third quadrant is clarity of your current reality. Where are you and how far are you from your future? Then the fourth quadrant, which a lot of times we don't even get to, is clarity of the blueprint to get you from here to there. So anyways, I want to riff a little bit on that because I think most people don't have any clarity anywhere in their life. So as you started buying real estate, that was a big transition. Hey, I'm going to really focus on going from being employed to to owning my own businesses in real estate. What drove it? Because for me, I had to get super clear on my dream and my purpose before I had the motivation to actually go bigger in the areas we were going in.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the why for me has always been the clearest part, right? Like the how has been
Fat stacks,
unbelievably
like just
fuzzy.
fat stacks and
Yeah.
Bugattis.
Well, I was raised in a really close family and was also raised in a family where our mom was fortunate enough to stay home. And while I don't ever believe I would survive as a stay-at-home mom, just like knowing like what I love about business, like having that option at any family who has the option to leave a parent at home, I feel has like some of the greatest wealth that you could ask for,
For
right?
sure. I love that.
There was nothing I wanted less in my life than to be me and a partner who were bound to out of the home 9 to 5 jobs. Like that hamster wheel just sounds heinous, honestly. And it's like the unfortunate reality for basically like everyone. And so that was this probably the single biggest driver. And the irony is that I started all of this when I was about 25. I definitely didn't have a life partner, and I was nowhere near even being like ready for that. So I don't know why it like became so important at that young time, but I think I was perceptive enough to understand that brick by brick,
Yeah.
right? Like that just, it takes so much time. You can't just like wake up and want to have a family and decide like, oh, I guess I should figure out how to be able to stay home. I don't know. Just in my opinion, it doesn't work that way. And I knew that my W-2, as great as it was, just wasn't going to be the
Yeah.
answer. Fortunately, I found Bigger Pockets, which I'm sure a ton of people in the community listening to this podcast are familiar with, and just found it wildly interesting. So that helped, right? Like, I think, if I had decided that the only way for me to have a free life was by learning like quantum physics, probably would have just stuck with my day job. Totally fell in love with the process of real estate. Real estate is like just an endless hustle. And I'm sure that's, why I loved it. But yeah, just really like I have this saying that I just made up. So I don't know if it makes sense, but like I don't want to be a stay-at-home mom. I want to be a free mom. Right. And I still don't have kids, by the
Yeah.
way, but I'm like a lot closer to that than I was then. But that was really like the first thing for me, followed closely behind by, just like pure like family freedom, like again, I have amazing parents. I can't imagine not being able to take care of
Yeah.
them. My parents are still spry as heck and more social than me and whatever, but like they've spent their whole lives, taking care of me and giving me great experiences. Like I absolutely want to do the same for them. Same for my kids, same for my
I love
partner.
that.
Now, fast forward, not to jump ahead, we can dig into everything in between. Now I have employees who have the same, maybe not the same aspirations, that wouldn't be accurate, but they have the same wants for like their own security in their family. So now I have an even like different, more
Tato, are
evolved
you there?
perspective of like, okay, now I personally carry the responsibility of bettering those people's lives every day, which is just a responsibility that I personally have chosen. So it's evolved, but that's kind of like where it started. Like it was very clear to me that I wanted to be at a certain point in my life, and I had to figure out how to do it because nobody was going to do it for me.
So you were talking about clarity on the future thing that you didn't even have yet,
Yeah.
which was, hey, I want to have the freedom to be a stay-at-home mom, even though it might drive me bonkers. And you said it might be a little crazy, but I don't think that, because one of my commitments is to be a grandfather to best all grandfathers. And my kids are 8, 6, and 4.
Mm-hmm.
And so having clarity around that allows you to build this 20, 30-year runway.
Yeah.
And like we said previously, brick by brick. So key in on that and let's continue down that, because I think that's really useful.
Yeah, I kind of made this saying up that I hold true to my heart. I've decided I don't want to be a stay-at-home mom, but I want to be a free mom. And that goes just as well for my, soon to be husband, right? Like he'll never not work. It's who he is, but I want him to be free. There's a very clear definition of what free is and what free isn't. And very, very few
Yep.
people ever achieve actual freedom. And so
Yep.
that's the single biggest driver for sure. I now have evolved that even further in that now I manage, a whole host of employees, right? My employees want, maybe they don't ever aspire to true freedom because they feel it's just way outside of their reach, right? Just given like their own circumstances, but they certainly want, certainty for their family, right? They want more for themselves somehow. And, I want to be that, like the giant upon, the shoulders that they climb, if you will, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, what we've found too is like there's 4 main freedoms: freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of purpose, and freedom of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, hey, you want to have freedom of time to do what you want to do when you want to do it, capital to do the things. Man, this is annoying. It keeps giving me a thumb up, but that's okay. Freedom of purpose, right? Which is like, hey, I want to pursue my
Yeah.
passion the way I want to pursue it. And then freedom of relationships, which is what you said about your parents. Like, hey, I want to have the freedom to take care of my parents if need be. Now, my parents are in a good position, but that could change. And so I want to have those four freedoms. And then in your team members, it's the same thing. So when I ask people, hey, tell me why you want to do this, I'm hoping they come up with one of those, but I really want them to work through it.
For sure. And I will say, like, from my own experience, I've never, so again, with the whole like cliff diving thing, I had never even managed a single person, much less an entire team before buying my business. So that was such a new world to me. I don't even know if I could have honestly said like, oh, I want to like change the lives of, you know, the people who work for me. Cause I didn't even know what that felt like. I didn't even understand the responsibility that was, but agreed that like, maybe if you have to have some greater being beyond money initially, because if you don't, it will take you out 10 out of 10 times. It just will.
Yeah. It'll eat your lunch for sure. I mean, that's the whole like brick by brick. You've got to just show up and do the suck every day. And if you're just like, it's about money, I mean, you know, as well as we do, man, there's months, years, quarters, whatever, that you're not making that much money. Now, you're building what we call the net benefit of your business, the enterprise value of your business.
Yeah.
But if it's just like, hey, I need to make a ton of money in small business acquisition, I think people have made it super glorified. The reality is like, it's amazing. It is, I believe, the biggest wealth generator by far in our country. And it is really hard. And it's active and it's not passive. And so most folks, when I coach them, especially on the buy side, when we talk real authentic, like you and me, and I'm like, hey, this is what it's going to look like. It's not like all roses. It's going to look like this, really hard for the first 18 to 24 months. And then you can start building a self-governed entity with freedoms and doing these things. Most people are like, I'm not about that. Like, I would rather live a really mediocre life my whole life, not have any freedoms, than just doing the hard things.
Yeah.
Sweet. So let's talk a little bit about the transition from real estate to business acquisition.
Yeah, for sure. And that was actually one of my clarities too, though it's like less meaningful, but I started buying real estate and became obsessed with it. And simply speaking, I was like, I need to make more month over month cash flow to buy more real estate. Like that was like the entire hypothesis of buying the business. And it's, you know, very simplistic. So talk about being super clear, even though it snowballed into like 100 other things. It was just like, no, I need more money to buy more.
Yeah. And that was our thesis too. It was, look, we've got cash flow from the businesses. So let's put it into a tax benefit asset, real estate, right? So we can take the depreciation, amortization, all the things that come from real estate. That's going to decrease our taxable income over here. Then we can just continue to increase all of those, right? Yeah. So as soon as one of our businesses generates a substantial level of cash flow, our next decision is which business are we buying next, or which piece of real estate are we buying next? And really, like, if you become tactical, you should buy X percentage of dollars of real estate a year based on the cash flow of your existing businesses. And if you keep that going and you continue to 1031 exchange, I mean, like, it's just massive. I mean, this country is still the greatest country in the world. You can do anything in this country, I believe. Like, it's harder for some people than others, but the opportunity set is amazing. So let's think about somebody who's never bought a business, right? You went on a previous podcast and you had people text you, email you, say, hey, you're awesome, which you are. Show us your ways. We're trying to buy a business. We don't understand how to buy a business. So let's get a little tactical on how to get clear on buying a small business or a Main Street business.
For sure. Yes, you're right. I have answered this question a lot. And I always caveat it with, I'm still what I feel to be in the very early stages of my own journey. Like, there's so much that's unwritten. So who knows if this answer will evolve over time? I'm sure that it will. But I think right now, first and foremost, what you really have to decide is, like, what are your circumstances right now? Because that's what's going to dictate what you do next. So what I mean by that is, first and foremost, how much money do you have? Or how much money do you have access to, right? That's probably your primary leading indicator. Followed closely behind is, what is it that you think you want? I don't say what is it that you want, because you probably don't know with total certainty. So, like, do you want to take over a struggling business? And not dissimilar to real estate, right? Like, do you want a rehab or do you want a turnkey?
Yep.
Pro con of both.
For sure.
My first house I ever bought, totally turnkey. Amazing for a ton of reasons. Guess what? I left closing and realized, oh, my $70,000 down payment, I won't see again. You know, like I bought turnkey. There was nothing left to get out of the deal other than monthly cash flow. Not a bad thing. But in that moment, I was like, crap, that was not the strategy for me. I didn't.
Not enough value creation.
Not at all. No regrets, right? Would never have come to that conclusion without doing something. But this situation, like buying a business is way similar, other than the fact that it has a lot more factors involved. But yeah, like, do you want value creation? Do you want something that, you know, runs, I don't want to say seamlessly, but fairly well on the, you know, from the get-go, blah, blah, blah. All of that is a calculation, right? If you want something running smoothly, you're going to pay the price for it. I bought a turnaround. By the way, had no idea about a turnaround. Didn't mean to. Again, with the cliff diving, just bought something. Turns out it's a turnaround. It's been the hardest thing I've ever done. And I sure as shit hope it's the hardest thing that I ever will do. And I don't want to repeat it, but yeah. So that's really,
I hope it isn't. If it's the hardest thing you've ever done, then you're dead already.
Maybe.
No, you're going to do way harder things.
This is why I love you, Seekers. You're so right. Yes. You're right.
They won't. Yeah, it'll feel different for sure. Like your perspective will shift.
Yes.
So, okay,
That's
I want to
where I start with
restate what
people.
you. Yeah. So you talked about what we would say clarity of your current reality.
Yeah.
Like know where you are today.
Yep.
Like how much money do you have? What are your skills?
Yeah.
And then clarity of the dream is like, what do you want? Right? What do you want to build? So if you're like, hey, I have $50,000. That's it. I don't have family to give me money. I don't have any other way. I don't have a great balance sheet. It's like, okay, so we're going to have to start in a different path. Now, we recommend to any buyer that has a decent balance sheet, go bigger. The bigger you can go, the more stable, the more processes and people, the easier it is. And we've done both. Like we've bought these tiny little dinky businesses that we still own. And I'm like, man, that's a lot of work for what we're getting. And then we bought much larger businesses, still work, but a lot more bang for your buck, a lot more value creation. And then I can go in there with our systems and processes and have a team that already has an understanding of how to run the business.
Yeah.
So, okay, you know, I'm a 30-year-old person. I'm making good money, 150 to 200 grand in tech or finance or whatever. Why would I buy a business? Like, why would you recommend buying a small business? Or would you? Maybe you say, don't do it, run.
Well, so that literally was me, right? Like you just described me from a few years ago.
I think that's almost everybody that I'm talking to right now.
Yeah.
There's folks that are actually making really good money and are like, this is not what I want for my life. And I've got to make a change.
For me, and again, there's so many variations of this, but I believe that at 30, you still have so much left that you can do, right? Like, you know, you read all these posts like, oh, I retired at 30, whatever. Meh. Like, and do what? You know? So I feel it.
I don't believe in retirement, by the way, Tato. I think it's a filthy word.
That's totally fair. That's like a whole other philosophical thing, but I can get behind that for sure. But like at 30, it's kind of like, what else are you going to do? So honestly, if you've saved a decent amount of money and if you've had the type of job that you're describing, you at a minimum have some sort of like level of maturity, right? Like even if you don't have hard skills, I would look for the biggest thing you reasonably can afford, but I would have the expectation that you're going to be involved full time for some substantial period of time. And I think it's easy. Like, again, there's so much out there that's like, oh, if you're working full time in your business, like you're failing or whatever, you know? And so I think it's just really about like expectation setting and understanding, like to meet yourself where you're at, right? Like, don't, you know, comparison to others is your greatest enemy. Expect to work hard, expect to be really involved, and understand that by no means is that failure, you know? So that's what I think kind of like the optimal thing is. I literally bought a business with sub $1 million revenue and 2 employees. That was probably more risk than I should have taken on. So I'm not necessarily advertising that, but I think that there's a really healthy middle ground between where I was and that, like, you know, $1 million in EBITDA and I have a staff of 20, you know, 5 of whom are in leadership, and I just come in and hang at my desk.
Yeah. So I was coaching a young entrepreneur last week, and same thing. I said, if you've got to have clarity of what you want, what I would recommend is totally different, right? Because I've done this. We have 9 businesses, right? So we've done this a bunch and I've learned the mistakes, but I also did it counter to what I would recommend, right? I started small. I'm like, hey, let's minimize asymmetric risk, right? So a ton of upside, low downside risk. I'm not going to lose our house. I'm not going to lose,
Yep.
all the things we built, our real estate. And this young man was like, hey, I really want to buy something smaller. And I was like, well, look, what you have that I don't have is you have me. Like, if you want to go bigger, I can help coach you through all of the craziness of buying a business. And we can help you optimize it through EOS, through a bunch of tools that we've created. And I didn't have that. I mean, it was just like you. It was like, well, here we go. I don't know what I'm doing. I guess we'll figure it out. What I would also add, though, is like, I can't remember who used this term, but everything is figure outable. Like, that is my, maybe my mantra in life.
Motto.
We buy businesses almost in a different industry every time. And people, especially my parents, are like, what is wrong with you? You just learned this industry and you're going to go buy a commercial plumbing company. And I'm like, yeah, what an opportunity. I know nothing about commercial plumbing. Like, we've done a lot of construction projects, but imagine what I'm going to learn from that business that I'm going to take over to these other businesses. Plus, are going to expand it. So I think if you just have that, that desire to have the freedoms, the 4 freedoms, and you're like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to do it, and I'm not going to get discouraged, you will have success. And yeah, anyways, I'll let you.
You know what's so funny, Seegers? I don't know if you remember this conversation, but near the beginning, after my acquisition, I come to you for all sage wisdom. Like, I just think so highly of you. And I was like,
which might be a problem.
I spent probably 20 minutes just monologuing about everything that was wrong. You said to me, every business is more or less the same. And then you led into, and I don't even remember what you said, because I remember sitting there and being like, he just doesn't understand. Every business is not the same. My business is different, and I was so frustrated and upset and emo. And I laugh at that now, because even though I still have plenty of days that just get me down, now I definitely have the perspective to, I've evolved in that way to know that I hear what you were saying and you were so right. And so to your point about looking outside of your current industry, I totally get it. I can understand why people would gobble up all the similar businesses that they could in the same industry, but I also completely understand, on the same note, what you're saying, right?
And honestly, when people say niches are riches or niche down, absolutely. That's good advice for a lot of people.
Agreed.
But I am not built that way.
Yeah.
I'm we build it, we optimize it, and I'm either I'm going to mess this up because now I want to tinker with it and I really don't have anything to do, or I'm hey, I need to go create something new or learn something new. Yeah. And so I think for a lot of people, niching down is the way to do it. But for us, it wasn't a fit. And that's not advice that I give people, hey, go buy a different industry and have this huge learning curve. But businesses are fundamentally the same. Yeah. They are 2 things, and you and I talked about this. They're people and they're processes. If you get your people right and you have 0 processes, you will be successful. If you have good people with high integrity that show up and do work, even if you have everything on an Excel spreadsheet and no technology, you'll succeed. If you have people and processes, you will destroy your competition. Absolutely destroy it. And that's what we've really focused on. The people is by far the most important component. But if I compare my people with amazing curriculum and processes, both personally and within the business, then all of a sudden we're just we're hyperbolic. When my competitor is doing this, I'm like, man, we're already way over here, because my people have grown so much in the past 6 months.
Do you like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss an episode by clicking the subscribe button now, and check out our website, www.excoadvisors.com. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now, back to the show.
Okay, so I've got a question for you. What is the worst advice you got during the journey, or really bad advice that you keep hearing on social media or in the mainstream when it comes to business acquisition, et cetera?
I bought my business from who I would describe as the classic seller, right? Boomer, retirement age. His business was only ever him, and he was only ever his business. They were one and the same. I more or less just bought the building that we operate out of now. I really didn't even pay anything for the business. And the reason that he was not successful in actually selling his business was because he told me every single day of our training all of the ways to cut and be lean and not add this and don't do that. And there is absolutely a time for that. Absolutely. I'm implementing profit first in my business right now. It's all about okay, where's the fat? What can you run lean?
Pay yourself first. Yep.
But when you fundamentally believe that a business is just running your people into the ground as hard as you can and doing it on as little as, XYZ thing, and basically just like keeping your stuff small enough that it's only ever right here because it's what's within your control. That's,
Yep.
again, like, not that was like a succinct piece of advice, but that was just like generally his worldview, and I feel it's the worldview of a lot of people.
100%.
That's
Which is why their businesses stall out, right?
correct.
Because they've said, hey, we will no longer reinvest in our people
Correct.
or in our business. We're
Yes.
making enough money.
Correct.
This is it. Or, hey, if I invest that dollar, it actually isn't
Yep.
going to get me where I want to get, which is not correct. But yeah.
There
So
is-
can I tell you some of the advice that I've heard a lot
Yeah.
and get your thoughts on it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I won't say my opinion of it until you tell me yours, but I hear a lot: burn the bridges, burn the ships.
Yeah.
If you're going to buy a business, quit your job. You
Yeah.
got to focus solely on this, only do this. What do you think now that you've been through the process?
Oh, man.
What advice would you give somebody that's thinking about taking that counsel?
Yeah, it's so hard because truly I believe that depends on the person. I really do. I don't know. I think if you can manage two things and you can keep a really healthy income on not a lot of hours, it's not unwise. The challenge is that, at least in my experience, if you're not 200% there and in it, what you give is what you get, right? Like, I believe that's just like a blanket life rule. What you give is what you get. And I think if you're kind of straddling multiple things, you're inevitably not ever going to give your all to that thing. And that's just kind of like cheating yourself. That's how I feel.
Interesting. I love it. That's really good. So I've hated this advice because I think, once again, I want people to think about asymmetric risk. The deal, like your business, what I loved about it is exactly what you said. I bought the real estate.
Yeah.
I got the business. That's asymmetric risk. Hey, the business fails. Great.
Yeah.
I got a great real estate deal.
Yep.
And I didn't spend additional money.
Yep.
And yet I think entrepreneurs that have had to take a lot of risk and made a lot of money or lost a lot of money, they have this jaded view of like, well, tons of risk means good reward or vice versa. I think that's fundamentally wrong. Every deal we do, the last deal we bought, the deal was going to fall apart because the owner didn't want to do the thing. And I was like, hey, you're going to owner carry 97% of this or we're out. And this is why, like, interest rates just went up 4% more. It's going to cost $1 million more to carry this thing, blah, 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 whatever it might be. And I was willing to walk away from it. And she's like, yeah, I guess I'll do that. And as a result, she got an awesome deal. We got an awesome deal. And I have like no risk. So we have even our commitment on it, our personal guarantee, it's like a minimum personal guarantee that we had set. We don't even personally guarantee the whole thing. So I want to tell people like, hey, don't just say like, hey, yeah, it's vanilla and it's all the same thing. If you're negotiating a deal, find somebody like me or Tato and get some counsel, because there's so many ways that you can get what you want without being like, I'm going to lose my house. I got to bet it all, et cetera. Or like step into it.
I'm sensing that the next episode should be about how to get 97% seller carry, because I'm pretty sure that little hot tagline just caught everybody. But
I'll give it to you in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Tato.
Okay.
And then we'll do a deeper one.
Don't
ever fall in love with the deal and look at 100 deals.
Yes.
And just keep on.
No, amen.
Making the same proposal.
The worst saying on the planet, because it's gross, but it's so true, is that there really are so many ways to skin a cat. There just are.
Yeah, for sure. Who has ever skinned a cat? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But it really is so true. It's like probably like the single biggest skill I feel you need to either have or acquire to do this is to play in the gray. You just play in the gray all day, you know?
In the gray.
Okay,
so
you're expecting black
we've
or
been all
white,
over
you're going
the
to be
place.
sorely disappointed.
I agree with that 100%. And be able to act in the gray.
You bet.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about clarity. So we're saying, hey, if you're listening to us, you need to get clear on your current reality. You need to get clear on where you're going in the blueprint. Let's talk a little bit about, so one of the first things I recommend buy-side clients is, hey, write out a buyer profile and a buy box, right? So buyer profile is what we talked about. Hey, this is my net worth. This is how much I have. This is what I'm looking for. These are my skills, whatever it might be. The things that you think are important. It could be to an advisor, a broker, a potential person that you're direct mailing, whatever. That. Yeah, absolutely. And the second piece is the buy box. That, and I'll just give you how we did it, which is a totally weird way to do it. I took every listing on any online platform that was selling businesses. And then I just looked at them for like days. I'm like, all right, there's thousands of business for sale in the US. What do I like? What do I not like? Right. I love the law of magnetism. Like, all right, liquor stores, I was like, not a fit for me. Not that it's not a good business, just not a fit for me. Restaurants, nope. And then I started feeling more and more like, all right, I don't love asset heavy businesses for a variety of reasons. I also don't like heavy real estate businesses if I'm buying. And so I started building this buy box. Hey, I want to be in this zip code, these states, not these states. What were some of the things that came out of it that you would recommend somebody who's really kind of on the initial phases of figuring out who am I, what kind of business do I want to buy, and where do I go next?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did all those very similar exercises. I took it one step further, I will say, again, just because I came from a place of more lacking of clarity than I think, you have now or I have now. I decided that within a certain realm of reason, I would just send direct mail to like basically any business, not any business. I had like maybe a dozen like top hits, right? Where I'm like,
Yep.
I can't necessarily tell you I could for sure see myself running that, but I certainly like, I couldn't not see myself doing it
Yep.
because I just like needed to learn. So I feel like you're describing step one. I did like step zero, which was like not sure, open to a lot. So I'm just going to throw a whole bunch of spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks.
I love it. Okay, so let's dig into that direct mail.
Yeah.
So you and I met in a mastermind, and then you had a direct mail company.
Yes.
We were using direct mail and buying minerals and royalties
Yep.
and real estate. We bought raw land in 6 different states, still are running that business. I started talking to you and you're like, hey, I think you can use this for buying businesses. And I'm like, tell me more. How do I get the data?
Yeah.
So walk somebody through that, because we've actually
sure.
helped a lot of clients now on that. So talk to me a little bit about how that would work.
Totally. This is the one thing I have really dialed in. So I believe great deals exist everywhere. I believe the vast majority of great deals exist outside of the internet and off market. It's exactly how I bought every piece of real estate that I have is off market mailings. So specific to businesses, I learned that a lot of statewide library chains offer a subscription free to library subscribers called Data Axle. It's Data Axle, Reference USA. One bought the other. I don't ever remember which. And it is, I believe, the most robust database of small business in America. It's a database for other things too, but that's what I've used it for. And I can't take credit for that. That was credit of my former business partner in the direct mailing business. But he was like, this database is amazing.
I'll still give you credit.
It's a little like lacking of modernity, but its data is really accurate. So anytime I've mailed a list, I've never once, and I've mailed probably 20,000 people off of this database. Never did I have someone call and be like, what is this? Like, I've never even heard of this, thing.
100%.
The least, like at most, it was like, oh, I'm sorry, I sold this 5 years ago. So it's such a great tool. Once you get your list, which I highly recommend you do yourself because it's good exercise and it's the thing I think you should control, you have lots of different options, right? You can use a mail house, you can do it all yourself, you can do everything in between.
Okay, so let's back up because I want to be tactical. And let's make sure we give your contact information at the end.
Yeah,
Not that we have many people listening to this, but when we're really famous, they're going to come back to this episode.
I'm going to be like, why would you do that? Yeah.
Okay, so tactically, so get Data Axle. So look on your library, get a library membership. So you get into Data Axle, website's going to pull up and it's going to allow you to pull different NAIC codes for a specific type of business, right? So if I wanted to buy HVAC companies, I could search that, figure out what that code is and say, I want to buy HVAC companies in this zip code. And then they even have more levers as far as what they believe the revenue is, employee count, and some other things within that can help refine it. So if I'm like, hey, most companies are within a 10 to 20% net profit. So let's say you're $1 million revenue business is probably going to be, I don't know, somewhere between 100 and 250,000 net profit. If you're like, that's my target, I'm going to pay a 2X or 3X for that. Then you can start dialing that in. So then you pull that data down. And then where do you go from there?
Yeah. again, that's kind of where options come into play, right? Because you could download that list and you could just send it to a mail house. They'll take in a list, and you provide them with verbiage that's going to go on either the postcard or the letter, and you can just kind of hit send.
And what would that cost? What, for our listeners, what is that going to cost? So you get the data for free, but then...
Yeah, the cheapest thing you can do is a postcard. And I want to say postcard stamps right now are like, I don't know, somewhere between 10 and 20 cents. That's hands down the cheapest thing you can do. The downside of cheap is that if it's cheap, everybody else can do it. So what do you get most in the mail that you throw away? Postcards, right? I literally just threw away, a good friend of ours is a realtor, and she freaking keeps sending postcards, and I immediately throw them away. And like, I know her,
For
so
sure.
I've always, what I feel is so strongly the best use of your money and time is taking the time to do an 8.5 by 11 letter. And people also think that this is weird, but like, I'm a huge proponent of this. Put a photo on it if you can, or if you're willing to. I'm a young woman. It is unique, just like from the get-go, that I am like out there doing the things that
I love that's how you self-identify. You're like, I am a young woman, just to be clear.
I know.
Just to be clear, everybody. I got a lot of good life ahead of me.
Well, it's like a weird thing, but it's like what sets me apart initially, is like
a young woman buying a business is very unique.
Tragically, it's like why I get a lot of phone calls, that just like speaks 100%. To the tragedy of the world, but whatever, like lean into what makes you unique, So anyways, and I don't feel at all that these things need to be handwritten. I've had crazy success with typed letters. I believe that putting your photo on there it just immediately makes you approachable, even though like, no offense, you're a boring man, like, well, you're great. People don't know you're great by your picture. You're just like
I'm a boring white guy. You, on the other hand, you just get responses. So maybe have Tato send your mail for you.
No, but like
exactly.
Like the other unique thing is like the fact that you're willing to put your photo on there. Like most people by default would just never think to do that. So even if you put your picture on there, I 100%. Truly believe you would get a better response than just like the random letter that has no picture. It like disarms people.
It's a connection.
Right? It is because they know when they dial the number or send the email, they know where it's going, and that disarms them.
I love it.
So I use mail merge, super simple. And I have my typed message. You helped me write my message long ago, if you recall. And it really emphasizes like low pressure. I want to buy a business and you own a business. And I would love to talk to you about that, because unless I'm wrong, I'm going to guess that you don't necessarily have plans yet of how you're going to get out of your business. I say it more eloquently than that. But I always end it with, but if that's not an appropriate conversation to have as a young person, I would just be so grateful for 10 minutes of your time, because you've obviously done something 100%. Really impressive. And I have nothing but knowledge to gain from that.
I love that. And I'm a young woman.
And so just as a reminder, I'm young. I'm a young woman. You should find me fascinating just based on this letter. No, but I
love it. Okay.
Yes.
So that's super helpful. And we've sent, oh my God, like over the course of all of our businesses, we've sent hundreds of thousands of pieces of direct mail. Yeah. And have seen a lot of different responses in different industries. But I will say with the picture, so I believe authenticity is making a huge comeback. Yeah. So that's why we're shooting this podcast the way we are. We're not like touching it up. We're not having this big production crew. It's like, hey, people just want to hear from other people what's hard, what's real. Mm-hmm. And it's the same way with direct mail. It's like, look, everyone's getting Facebook ads and email marketing. Yes. And it's like, if you get a letter that's just like, hey, I'm a human being, you're a human being. I think I can help you with some of the things you're trying to achieve. I think you can help me with some of the things I'm trying to achieve. Love a conversation, no pressure. That generated our first batch that we did generated, and we didn't buy any of these, but they were all great leads. A staffing company, multiple plumbing companies, some laundromats, like just a ton of cool leads, and actually like really good connections out of them. Yeah. So like, hey, we didn't buy any of those businesses, but the staffing company, I still stay in touch with the gal and have helped her a little bit on thinking how to optimize the business so she can actually sell it. Okay. So we're coming to the end of our show. What is the funniest thing that has happened during your business journey? I know you've been crying every day because it's been so hard, but what's the funniest thing? Or what are some just like, maybe some things that were so like, that were just like, I have to laugh because I don't want to cry today.
Yeah. It is funny how much I've cried, I think. I guess reminiscing on it, it is funny. It's like, oh, wow.
Do you know, as we get older, I'm becoming a lot more emotional too.
Really? Oh my God, me too.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's
Yes,
really
it's
interesting.
so bad.
Or good. I'm embracing it.
Honestly, like, I think thinking like if I okay, I pretty much blacked out the first 6 months of me buying my business because it was just such a disaster. But I literally showed up on like day one and I was like, cool. So, like, what do we make here? Like what, like, how does this work? And it was so sincere. I was like, awesome. So, like, how do we do it?
So if Tato can do it, anyone can do
Literally.
it. Zero research needed.
I mean, and of course, like, I understood the basics of like, okay, they manufacture, bathroom products for, like spec builders and remodelers, whatever. But it's like a chemical manufacturing process that I didn't know anything about, like maybe we talked about it during like my tour, but it certainly didn't stick. And it certainly didn't mean anything to me until, it was time to rock and roll. And you know what I've never done? I've never actually asked my one remaining employee who I've kept from the acquisition. I've never asked him, like, what did you think the first week when I got there? Because you've now.
Oh, you should ask him that.
Yeah, I
That would
know.
be the
I can't
hilarious
believe
story.
I never
Oh
have.
my
Now that
gosh.
we're talking about it, I'm like,
He's like, well, first of all, she was a young woman.
but I was just gonna say,
So
well,
we
first
need
of all, I just noted how young you were. I was just gonna say that.
Love it.
But like, he's like one of my closest friends now. Like, we truly like our business
That's
partners.
great.
He's cut into the business and blah blah blah. It's been a whole journey. He's the best. But
That's
yeah,
great.
I'm gonna ask him that tomorrow. We need a follow-up episode just to know what Noah said. But yeah, just the sheer, like, I think it's just hilarious how just unbelievably uneducated and naive I was, But again, like, I chose to enter this space in that manner because that's just how I operate. There are a lot of people who are going to study and study. They're going to defer so that they can study. And I am so all there. That's fine. So long as it eventually leads to action. If it never leads to action,
100%.
then, I don't really want to hear about it. But if it's intentional, I completely understand. But
I can't remember who said, but somebody told me the other day, they're like, action is the only proof.
Yeah.
Like, don't talk to me about what you've done or this, that, and the other, and then find out, whoa, you haven't done it. That's why we wanted to put out these courses and this podcast, because it's like most people are talking about all this stuff they have never done. Like, we've done it. We've done it multiple times. Tato's done it. And like, action is the proof. Like, that is the proof. So if you're trying to buy a business and all you're doing is talking about it, there's no proof that you're actually buying a business until you go do something.
Couldn't agree
So
more.
awesome. Okay, what are your closing remarks? What do you want? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just did think of one story. This is like definitely insulting, but honestly, I just have to laugh. This happened recently. So I feel like nowadays I like definitely can speak to what we do with incredible intelligence, and like I completely understand it. I can sell the product, blah, 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 whatever. But, I'm not out there trying to be like a master of the field, right? I'm trying to be a master of the business. It's two different things. But we were a little short staffed and I was like, oh, I'll go measure the shower. That's completely fine. And I was talking about my employees who are all male. And the homeowner, after I measured the shower, literally goes, you've mentioned a person named Noah a couple of times. And if he had availability, it would make me feel comfortable if he came back and remeasured the shower. Like, he didn't feel confident with, like, I guess how I went about it. I don't know if I was like too chatty or like not
I
like,
probably wouldn't either, to be honest.
down to it enough. I don't know, whatever. That's pretty funny. I was really offended for a hot minute, and then I was like, oh my God, that's hilarious. All right, well, I'll retire from shower measuring.
I love it.
So Noah did go back the next day.
A lot of the humor that comes out of business is like the tough stuff. So
Completely.
we had, and this is hilarious. So when we buy a business, generally we're going to lose 60 to 80% of the team because we're going to change the culture.
Yeah.
We're going to have accountability. Like, it's just going to be totally different. And we do it with grace and kindness. But we had a gal who resigned to go take a job somewhere else. And I was like, hey, great. I'd actually like to keep you a little longer if you would, to make the transition. Oh, no, I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm like, okay, so be it. Went to another job, got fired from there, and then tried to file for unemployment insurance from me.
Yeah,
and
amazing.
I was like, so I'm like, wait, hold on a second. You resigned. You went to work for somebody else. And she's like, well, I just feel like you should pay it. And I'm like, you resigned. I wanted to keep you. I would have paid you the salary. And so my brother and I were both commiserating, laughing about that, because we were just, you get angry sometimes, Tato, and you just gotta laugh about it.
I had an employee steal our company credit card. He went to the mall, went on a shopping spree,
What did
And
he buy?
when
Anything good?
he bought like all kinds of jeans and stuff. He actually spent a lot of money. I got the charges. Luckily, I got them like live from Capital One. So I immediately saw that it
Yeah.
was at the mall, and I was able to track down the store. And he was smart enough to want his in-store points. So he made sure to attach his profile to the purchase. I
Interesting.
was like, oh man, I didn't even get to like hunt it down. Just like I caught you just in 2 seconds.
It's
Like it
just so
wasn't even
easy.
fun.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
He
I mean,
then
that's what I've always said. If you're going to be on the dark side, do it really well.
totally. He
Don't
then
just muck around with it.
totally.
Make it a little bit difficult
I
for us to
know.
figure it
He
out.
then told me he would pay me back with interest. I obviously have yet to see $1. And don't trust a
$1, yeah.
criminal when they tell you that it's just a loan.
Okay, so let me ask you this. We've gone long because it's so wonderful to be chatting with you, and we're going to do a lot more of these. What's one thing you'd want to close with or share with folks, either buy side, sell side, optimize side? Like, is there anything that's coming to your mind out of this conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that every person has a different set of circumstances for sure. So I can only speak to my own. But I mean, the world is really vast and it's really easy. And I catch myself doing this all the time, by the way. It's really easy to feel like, oh man, like it's just this one thing or else. If this one thing doesn't go right, then, and I'm just a massive believer in trying and falling on your face and then doing it like 17 more times until you find something that works. I'm not saying to risk your house, but I'm just saying to literally just do something. I have so many people who are like, what's my first step, right? Why don't you think of a business in your hometown or wherever you live that you think is super cool? Like it can be like, oh, I wonder what that metal fabricator does. Or I wonder like, oh, the coffee shop's super cool. And 9.5 times out of 10, you're going to find the owner or the manager, whoever. And if you say, this might sound really dumb, but I'm considering business and yours is really interesting to me. Like, can you tell me more about it? They'll be like, oh, cool, totally. Right? It's like the world is vast. Like you can't embarrass yourself. Just like go try some harmless something.
Yep, I love it. So I was coaching a young guy in Denver. It's a terrible story, but I think the counsel I gave him might be useful for the audience. So he got some coaching from a guy on how to buy a business. The guy was going to buy it with him. They went in, they closed on the business. The other guy's money never came, right? It was like just this guy put his money down. So this young guy who's made a lot of money in real estate is now running a landscaping company. And he's like losing his mind. He's like, Chris, I don't know how to run this thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should just like get out of it, sell it, if I should try to keep it, optimize it. And he's just like just keeps going, right? Because he's in the mud. And I just said, look, man, like, here's what I would do. You're giving yourself like two options. One is I lose money, I shut it down, I sell it, whatever today. The second is I have to run it myself. I'm like, go home, like get a pad of paper out, sit with your wife and come up with 5 options. I'm like, we always get in these like parallel paths where it's like, it's either I'm going to lose everything or I got to do this.
Correct.
And it's like, go give yourself 5 options for how you could take this situation and make it better.
Yeah.
And we're here to help you in any way.
That was such good advice.
Can. But that just allowed him to be like, oh, you're right. Like it doesn't, just because I'm in the situation where someone was really terrible and unethical and he didn't do his due diligence either. He never should have been like, he had to take responsibility. I should have never been with this guy. I didn't know him well enough. I didn't do blah, blah, blah. But now it's like, okay, you're in the situation, but don't let it eat your lunch. Like give yourself 4 or 5 options. And then that allows you to really like open your mind up. Same thing with buying a business is like, it's not just this or that. It's hundreds of millions of different variables.
Yeah.
And I think bringing that, but then also the bricks, like we talked, hey, once you have those options, then start shrinking it down to, all right, I've got 5 options. Okay, now the 3 best are these. Okay, now the one that I'm going to action today is this. I'm going to put a brick down today. And that brick is I'm going to evaluate 10 businesses and I'm going to send an LOI on one by the next 30 days.
By the way, like LOIs are non-committal. Like I'm not saying to waste people's time. That's not a good recommendation. But like you got to get reps in, you just do.
So one of the next episodes I want to do is the 10-minute business evaluation.
Yeah.
So when we look at a new business, I literally 10 minutes, either me or my team, take the financials, 5 years, P&Ls, tax returns, balance sheets, inventory lists, whatever you can get. I run through it for 10 minutes and I will either be able to say, hey, this is a decent business or this business sucks and I shouldn't pursue it. So that's, yeah, I don't know why it keeps doing the thumbs up, but that's why, like, I encourage, get reps, right? Like, get through it. And
You
then
got
pretty
to.
soon, like, and here's another thing, like, well, anyways, it's a whole nother
Closing remarks.
Tato,
Tough to
closing
do.
remarks for another 50
I
minutes.
know.
All right, Tato, where should people, when this thing becomes famous and everyone's like, who is this Tato person?
Yes.
Where should they find you and communicate with you?
Well, at that time, I will still be very young, so I will tell you where. No, I'm just kidding. I am.
So what? Snapchat?
Yeah.
What's the newest thing before that's coming? Like, what else? What's coming that the young kids know about that we don't?
Yeah. I'm very present on LinkedIn and just regular old email. Like, I have no problem with people having my email address. Happy to leave it in the show notes. I'm very findable.
Why don't you just say it out? Because AI is going to transcribe all the show notes.
Oh, perfect. Okay. It's tatohomes@gmail.com. TATOHOMES@gmail.com. With a name like Tato, TATO, I'm like the most findable person ever. It's like me and Britney Spears. Like, you found us both in the same amount of time. So,
I love it.
just hunt me down.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. And we're going to share this to as many people as we can and hopefully help some people.
Thank you so much.
Love sharing the time, and we'll catch up soon.
Sounds good.
Okay. Adios.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Exceptional Companies Podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or via RSS so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. If you liked this show, please reach out through our website, www.excoadvisors.com, for free tools to order a copy of Selling Main Street, or to sign up for our free webinar on how to sell your Main Street business.